Hello, and welcome to another session on using Blender 2.79 for video editing. In the last few sessions, we've been looking into how to create masks, how to create markers for motion tracking, and then taking the mask and the marker, putting them together so it relieves some of the burden on us for trying to animate a mask over time in case you're trying to put a mask around a subject. So in that example from before, it was a simple thing. I was tracking the foot of a microphone, a little bit of motion, but it tracked perfectly, no exceptions. I didn't have to do any manual restarts. That typically doesn't happen. Typically, you have to go in there and fix things because the tracker has either given up, that it can't figure out, where to set the marker in the next frame, or maybe it went off the rails. It started tracking something else entirely, so you have to back it up and restart from that position. So we didn't talk about any of that stuff. We didn't even talk about all the different settings you can use. We're going to go into that today. And before we get into that, I want to make it clear, I am not an expert with motion tracking. This is really just an introduction to the different features that you can try to give you an idea of the different things you can try doing, and you can experiment on your own, or certainly go and try and look up other resources to help you in this field. Okay, so with all that said, let's get started. This is the scene that I had animated the mask by hand, and it was a bit of a painful process. It took quite a long time to do it. In the end, at the end of this video, I'm going to see if we can apply what we've learned about motion tracking to create a tracker for us so that we can then attach the mask to it. But we're going to start with something a little bit easier. I have it over here as a marker position in our timeline. It's the easy start here. So let me just use the marker, jump to previous. So this is what we're going to focus on first. Let me just zoom in a little bit over here, make that bigger. Okay, so what are we looking at? So we have Agent 327, and again, we're going to try to create a marker that we can then attach to a mask to blur his face. And if I scrub through here, you'll see he was bending down, he stands up, just looks around, and then at this point there's a cut to zoom in a different perspective, and then it shifts around a little bit, and then he starts walking off. So all in all, not too much motion on his part, but still we're going to find that it won't be a perfect easy one click for us. So let's just jump back over to the beginning. And one of the biggest things when you do this is you have to figure out what you want to track. That's very important because some things are easy to track, some things will give you problems right from the start. So if we zoom in, and keeping in mind, like, whatever you want to track has to be somehow related to the thing you want to mask for our purposes. So of course we're going to be thinking about, okay, something relating to his head, his face, or maybe torso. So what I'm going to try doing is his tie, because when I was looking at it, I was looking and I could see that sometimes he turns his head, so then that might make it difficult because features on his face, they shift around, they change a lot. But in terms of his tie, like, his body is more or less facing the same direction most of the time, except for this part here where he turns, he turns to his left, but even then, not that bad. The only thing here though is that after he stops talking and he starts moving off camera, you can see he moves towards the camera and off to the side, so everything gets bigger. And we'll see how that behaves when we try to apply the tracker. Okay, so I'm going to jump back again to the starting point, and we are going to set a marker right over here. So I'm zooming in with the mouse wheel, and I'm going to hold down on the control key and click my left mouse button. And there we go. So now we have our tracking marker set. And now with the tracking marker in position, now if we look up at the top here, again, all of this panel on the right hand side is all options and settings relating to our marker. At the top is the preview, is actually what Blender is trying to track, and it's kind of hard to see, but that is basically the tie, like all zoomed in. These buttons here, I really don't touch them that much, but my understanding is that you can check off these different buttons, and it can change how Blender looks at the footage in terms of figuring out what to track. The idea is that the ideal marker or feature is something that has a lot of contrast. So checking off these things might help, but I don't ever use those, so I can't speak to them. Okay, so we're going to scroll down and go into tracking settings, and let me try to explain these things in more detail now. So motion model is, the idea here is, okay, when you look through the footage, you make a decision about what's going on with your marker. Like if it's really just moving around, going left, right, up, or down, then you can keep it to location, LOC. But if you find that it's not only is it moving around, but maybe it's also rotating, then you would go with this location rotation. And then similarly here, this is for if it's moving around but also increasing or decreasing in size, then you'll go for location scale. And then if all of those things are happening, you go with this option. And these other two, actually, I've never tried before, so I'm not really sure what they're doing. So for now, let's just keep it at the default location. In terms of match, then this is, as it goes frame to frame, what is it trying to match against? So if you set it to, if at the default keyframe, it's always trying to look at the current frame and compare it to the last thing that you had manually set as a keyframe, right? So always comparing to that original frame or the latest one if you had to do a manual fix. The other option is previous frame, which is a simpler concept, right? Just like you're at frame number 10. Okay, so now in frame number 11, does it look like frame number 10? And then at frame 12, does it look like frame 11? Just always the previous frame. And sometimes that actually works a lot better. But we're going to stick to keyframe for now. Prepass is always on by default. Not sure what it does. Normalize, I've heard that it's better, but it helps, but it makes things slower. So we're going to leave that alone for now, and we'll check it off if we need to. Now, if I open up extra settings, so correlation, the idea is like how good of a match is it for it to count, right? So at default, it's 75%. If it's like at least 75% the same as whatever we're trying to match against, again, so that's either keyframe or previous frame, then it'll accept this and it'll take that as the current position of the marker in this frame. If I find I'm trying to track something and it's giving me problems all the time and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, well, that should have matched, right? I can see that it hasn't really changed much, but Blender still stops, then I'll adjust this setting, I'll bring it down, and that does help sometimes, not all the time. Frame limits, I think, is just like how many frames at most it'll try to track. Margin, I never touch. Speed is actually how fast do you want Blender to track? Because sometimes the tracking is really fast, but it does it wrong. So you can actually force it to go at real time. So it'll only track at most in real time. So you have a chance to look and see what it's doing and stop, press the escape key if it's going crazy, because that does happen sometimes. Or you can even slow it down to less than real time, so you can pay attention and watch as it goes frame by frame. The default is fastest, so it just goes as fast as possible. And for my computer, you know what? I'm just going to set it to real time. I can't remember if it actually can do it in real time, but we'll see. Let's see about other settings. So camera, no, I never touched that. I think that's to do with solving for like 3D animations, but I have never needed to use it for the kind of work that I do for video editing. Similarly for lens, I'd never touched that. So these options here, lock to selection is handy to have. We talked about it before, so I'm going to turn it on for now, because then that way this marker will always stay fixed in position. Don't need those things for now. Let's look at markers enabled. This is useful. This is information about the marker. Like if it changes in size, you can get that kind of information from here, but we don't need to see that right now. I'm going to close that. Okay, so search is something we turned on before, so I'm going to keep it on again because this will let us see and control, if we want, where within the frame it's going to try to find the marker in the next frame. Right, and I think we're good for now, so let's go ahead and try to track. And to do that, the buttons are on the left side. So let me bring it down to here. Okay, so over here, under track, this is the button we're going to try and click. And before we do that, I'm going to bring this back up to the top so we can see this. And I'll explain in a bit because I expect it to fail. So let's go ahead and click the button. Okay, so we made a few frames. We were a few frames in, but it did fail. So let's take a look. So over here, you can immediately tell that it's failed because the preview window here becomes some kind of pink or purple color. So what we can do, we can use the arrow keys and back up a little bit just to see how well it did. So you can see we did how many frames there. So starting from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames, and it was perfect. And then 6th frame, somehow it couldn't handle that. So when it gets to this point, basically you have to adjust it. So you can pick up the thing. So we can just press the G button, right, to grab and just move it around into position and then set where it ought to be. So what I like to do is I like to set it, and then I'll use my arrow keys just go back a frame and then just go back and forth to compare and make sure I'm still relatively about the same. So I didn't actually put it quite where it was before. You can see over here that I shifted it a little bit too much over. So I can click G again and just bring it back over to like that, and then hit left and right again. Now a little bit too high, but it's probably good enough. Now the one thing I've learned recently is that I don't need to click G and drag around the mouse over here. I can actually do the same thing over here. I can just left click within this window and just pan it around. So if we go back to this frame, so we can see that it's supposed to be a little bit down over here. So I can just left click and drag it down, right? I can just left click and drag and move that wherever I want it to be. But still not quite perfect, but I think it's good enough. So once that's set, we can go ahead and try to continue tracking. So let's just click this button and see how far it gets now. Okay, so far so good. Okay, good. So we made it through the first bit. So where are we now? Oh yeah, so we're right here, right in the middle. So we made it all the way through from the start up until the point where the scene cuts. And it only took us one adjustment to make. So now we can zoom out and we can see here, this is where the tie is now. So we can just make that switch. So I'll press G to grab our marker and then bring it down to here. And the one thing I'm going to want to do is I can see here, if I zoom in or look over here on the preview, we can see that in its current size, it doesn't actually cover the entire tie anymore. And that can be a problem because of the fact that Right now, all it sees is this one line of the tie. So it doesn't have any concept of, the left or the right side of the tie. It might start shifting around and it'll think it's okay because it doesn't know any better. So in this case, we're going to make this bigger so that we can see both the left and right side, the full width of the tie. So I will press the letter S to scale this and just drag it out until I can see something like that. Okay. And then I'll left click to release. So this is a change that happens going forward. If I back it up to the previous frame, you'll see that it's the same size. I mean, sorry, the original size. In fact, I can go over down to here where we had the marker information. You can see here, where is it? Pattern area, 21 by 21, right? And if I press the right arrow, go into the next frame, you can see then it jumps. Pattern area now is 37.86 by 37.86. So we can make those kinds of changes to the marker as we go through. Anyway, so now let's bring this back up to the top, and I'll hit the play button, the track button, or else I can press Control T as the shortcut. Let me do that this time. Oh, it didn't work well. Okay, so somehow it didn't take. But no problem, I can just click here and reset and press Control T again. Okay, so I'm not sure why I didn't like that, but so I have a couple of choices now. I can just keep doing this manually, or we can try that thing I was talking about, the correlation. Let's try to reduce the correlation. Let's try to reduce it to maybe 60%. See if that makes things a little bit easier for it. And I'll just back up a frame, actually a few frames. Bring this up to the top again. Actually, and because we just adjusted that value, we might find that because we reduced the correlation, now it might go off track. So let's reduce it to like half speed, just in case that helps us. Okay, and let's see how this goes. Okay, so far so good. Yeah, good. Okay, and now it stopped. I guess because, and this could be because of the fact that now he's starting to move, not just turn, but he's starting to come closer to the camera. Because if I bring this back up and I move this around, you can see it is looking different from before. It's a little bit bigger, but let's keep going and see if we can continue this. Okay, not bad, not bad. Okay, and then here. How did that look different? Let's back it up a bit. So we got to this point and it failed at that point. If I can bring it down over here. Oh yeah, now the tie is so big it doesn't recognize it anymore, is my guess. Let's just do a single frame forward, see if it can track that. Okay, it could. Good, good. Okay. So we've got our completed tracking marker here. I mean, that's good enough, right? Because if I zoom it out, we can see that we've got the marker going the whole time. And actually, let me just hit the play button. All right. So that looks pretty good. This looks pretty solid. We could definitely use that. Okay, let me stop that. We could definitely use that to join with a mask, and then tweak the mask over time. But definitely, it looks like it's something we could use. Now, before we do anything else, I wanted to try something. I wanted to see if we can change the model, the tracking model, to something that also involves scale, to see if it could have been able to pick up on that change, and then it wouldn't require us to do a couple more manual adjustments. So I'm going to back it up to here, and I'm going to click this to clear off everything it knows about what it has already done. And I'm going to change this from just location to location and scale. And I'll keep correlation at 0.6 for now, and let's just see how well it works. Oh, so again, the correlation, okay, so the correlation didn't actually help, but no problem. I'll just manually set again, and let's see. Now you might notice it's actually growing. Maybe it's a little bit hard to see, but oh, right, that you can probably see that. So still fail right there, but it actually grew and shrank in size, which I wasn't expecting it to keep popping up and down like that, but it did. Okay, that didn't actually help at all. You can see sometimes, yeah. To be honest, I did try this earlier and I didn't have the problems I'm having now. So it could be because of the correlation, could be something else, other things that I've tweaked. But in the end, we got it going. So that was the basic intro to the different options. Now I think we can try to tackle the other piece of it. So let's jump over to the start of the next scene, which is over to here. And let's see how well we can do this. So, actually, that's the first thing. Let's just delete that marker. I don't need it anymore. Okay, we're going to start on something new. So if we look at what we have here, looks like so we could maybe track the ear. I did try tracking the eye before, but every time he closes his eyes, then it's a point that we'd have to reset. But it wasn't that bad. Okay, you know what? Let's just try tracking up until this point. And what we'll try doing is we'll try to track not just his eye, but also his eyebrow. Okay. And honestly, I've tried doing this a whole bunch of times in preparation for recording this video. And I haven't quite gotten it right yet, but we'll see. We'll see how well it'll work right now. So I'm going to hold down on Control and left click right around here. And then I'm going to zoom in and start shifting things around. So first I'm going to scale it out so we can see everything. So his eye and his eyebrow. And maybe we'll just leave it at that for now. I could, if I wanted to, I could change this so that it's not a box, not a square, but actually very, very tight to capture just that. But let's just leave it as a square for now. Okay, so what else are we going to do? Let's see. So I know, like we've gone through it, I know there's definitely going to be rotation there. So let's change it to location and rotation. Maybe just those two and not scale, because it might be more or less the same. And there is a lot of change over time, right? It doesn't always look like this. So maybe we'll want to change it to match against previous frame. And this time maybe I will turn on normalize. Yeah, we're going to keep it at 0.75. Let's keep it at half for now to see if it goes off the rails. We'll lock to selection so we don't have to, because he does move around and I don't want to have to keep changing this so I can see what's going on. Okay, I think that's good. So let's hit not the play button. Let's hit the track selected markers and see how that goes. Okay, not bad. So you can see it's rotating, right? It's obviously rotating, and that worked out so far. Oh, whoa, that wasn't good. That wasn't good. Okay, so we can see there's when it thought it was tracking the right thing. So I'm using my left arrow to go back up a bit. Okay, so this is good. But at this point, it starts tracking his cheek instead. So let's clear that and let's move ahead and manually set this point over to here. Okay. And let it continue and see how well that goes. All right. Not bad. Okay, did not like the eye blink. No problem. Okay, let's just bring that down this way this time. Make sure I capture his eyebrow. Okay, give that a go. is working pretty well so far. Actually surprised to be when I was doing all my tests, I wasn't using the previous keyframe option that much. I was the previous frame, I was going by keyframe. Lots of problems with that. But using previous frame as the compare is working pretty well. Okay, so again, because of the eye blinking, doesn't like that, no problem. So let's bring that back down. Looks like I might need to rotate it. So let's we can hit the R button to rotate it this way. And do I need to shift it over? Yeah, because you know what? I want to be able to capture the entire eyebrow and a little bit past the eyebrow. So let's do it like that. And I think that'll help it. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay. Not bad. Okay, and I only really wanted to track up until this point anyway. So that worked pretty well. Let me just set a marker here. I'll press the letter M to set a marker on our timeline. Control M to name it. End of tracking. Okay. And you know, just to finish the job, let's go ahead and also create a mask so that we can then see it in action, that how we're going to pair it up, do the parenting, so we can see that this was actually a worthwhile effort. Okay, so we're going to use the markers. We're going to jump back to the beginning here. And the first thing to do is to deselect the tracking marker. So I'll press Alt-A for that. Is it Alt-A? No. I'm getting confused now because I'm using both versions of Blender. I think A twice. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to mask mode. So I'll go over here to mask. Could also press Tab. And I will press Control left click, I think, to add a mask. Nope, that was totally not it. Let's undo that. Something was weird there. Oh, right. Okay. Press Shift A, capital A for add, and I want a circle. Okay, and it's usually ends up in the bottom left because that's where that cursor is. So let's just hold G, drag that over to here. I'm going to zoom in a bit with my mouse wheel. Let's expand it out. Press S to scale. And just make it big enough, right? That should be good. Maybe move it up a little bit. Okay, great. And then I will make sure that my mask is not selected. Okay, I will press Tab to go here. Okay, selecting the tracking marker. Okay, press Tab to jump back over here. I'm just going to press A to select that. I think that's good. And now I'm going to click Parent. And now I'm going to zoom in and maybe I'll just scrub through. Okay, so let's see. Well, can I click on Lock to Selection? Was that going to help us? Okay. Click the play button. Okay, yeah. So of course, like we've done before, right? You can always tweak the mask if you need to over time. Just make sure you have the recording button turned on. And that's it. So we've talked more about how to work with motion tracking, how you can do your manual resets, the different options along the right there that you can change and play around with to try to get it to work for you. So hopefully that gives you a good start and you can continue exploring and learning from there. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do give it a like and subscribe so you can see more content when it comes. All right, so thanks and bye now. Let's try and follow this along. I'll hit the play button and see where that takes us. Whoa, that was not good. Okay.